So for this week, I decided to pick Georgia versus Randolph case and Tarasoff versus the Regents of the University of California. So I'll start with the Georgia versus Randolph case since that one's a little bit shorter and kind of cut and dry, a little bit better. So basically, the police showed up to Scott Randolph's house. They asked them if they could search the house. The wife said, "Sure, come on in." Scott Randolph said, "Absolutely not. I don't want you in my house." The police still proceeded to go in the house and search the house, and they found cocaine in the house. And they arrested Scott Randolph for drug possession, which, okay. And then in trial court, the trial court sided with the police and said that it was okay for them to do this. However, in appellate court and Georgia Supreme Court, they said that it was not okay for the police to do this, and they ruled in Randolph's favor. They basically said that it was unjustifiable and it was an unreasonable search, unconstitutional, that they could search this house when at least one person in the residency rejects. If one person in the residency rejects the police to search and they don't have a warrant, then they can't. And the police did not have a warrant in this case. And so they also said that it was going against the Fourth Amendment, which is us as people are supposed to feel secure from unreasonable search and seizures, especially in our own homes. And I believe that this case is important because it just kind of closes the gap for the loopholes in the justice system, because there are so many and it is hard to cover every single instance in laws. It's just hard to get all of them. And so I definitely think this is a great case. I've read several of the unreasonable search cases, and this is one that actually makes sense. There are a few that I don't even understand why someone would take this to court and say it was unreasonable search, but this one was definitely a really good example of how unreasonable searches can happen and how the Fourth Amendment can be broken by the justice system. So the next one that I want to talk about, which I'm really excited to talk about because I wanted to major in psychology before I wanted to major in elementary education, and that is the Tarasoff case. And so basically what happened was there was this man named Prasenjay Patter, and I'm saying it like that because I watched some videos and that's how they pronounced his name, so I'm going with that. So he attended the University of California in 1968. He met this girl named Tatiana Tarasoff in a dance class, and he immediately liked her. They hung out for several months, and then on New Year's Eve, Tatiana kissed Mr. Patter, and Mr. Patter took that as, "Oh, she really likes me, we're in a serious relationship now." However, when Tatiana found out that he believed that, she confronted him and said, "I'm seeing other guys, I don't want a serious relationship with you, I'm sorry." Yet, Mr. Patter proceeded to go on to propose to Tatiana, and she turned him down. Obviously, she rejected. And he, after that, went into a deep depression. He had a sick obsession with her, started stalking her, started recording their conversations. So he had several audio recordings that he would listen to on repeat in privacy. And he started talking about how he wanted to kill her to his roommates and to his friends. And at first, his roommates and friends were like, "It's just a girl, calm down, you're just upset, it'll be okay." However, he continued to talk about it, and in the summer of 1969, Tatiana went with her family to go to Brazil for 2 months for the summer. And during those 2 months, he continued to talk about how he wanted to kill her, and his roommate said, "Hey, I think you should go get some help. You should go see the school counselor." So he did. And then the counselor was like, "Whoa, this is a lot. You should see this psychiatrist named Lawrence Moore." So he went to Lawrence Moore, and for 8 weeks straight, they had 8 weeks straight of sessions, and he continued to talk about how he wanted to kill Tatiana, and he couldn't get that out of his head. And so the psychiatrist, Mr. Moore, said, "Hey, if you don't stop talking like this, I'm going to have to get you hospitalized. This is not okay." And so, of course, Mr. Patter stopped attending those sessions and just completely stopped going. And so then Dr. Moore was like, "What should I do?" So he went to his psychiatrist supervisor, and his psychiatrist supervisor was like, "Let's write a letter to the campus police, and we'll write a letter to them, and then they can go handle it from there, and they can go check up on him and ask him about this and question him." And so that's what they did. So the campus police got the letter, and may I remind you that during these sessions, Mr. Patter never said Tatiana's name, but it was very easy to tell who he was talking about. It wasn't hard to figure that part out. But he never said it, but the campus just got a letter. The campus police just got a letter saying that he is a threat to this girl and that they should go question him. And so they did. And they questioned him in front of his new roommate, which happened to be Tatiana's brother, which is kind of ironic. But they questioned him, and he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never made threats to kill this girl. I will leave her alone. I won't go around her. That's fine. And the police were like, well, we did our job, and left. So then the psychiatrist was like, well, we're not going down for this. And they decided to destroy the letter and destroy any documents saying that they wrote this letter. And so then, on October 27th of 1969, Mr. Potter went to Tatiana's house, and when she was by herself, and when he confronted her, she said, leave me alone, I don't want to talk to you, get off my property, and he didn't, and she tried to run away from the house and get away from him, and he caught up with her, and he had a kitchen knife, and he stabbed her and killed her. So the civil case in this situation is that Mr. Patters said that it was a diminished capacity manslaughter, which basically says that he was not in the right mind during this murder and that he knows that he's guilty and what he did was wrong, but he thinks that he should get a less harsher sentence because he was not in the right mindset and he is mentally ill. And the court said, absolutely not. This was not just a burst of aggressiveness. This is not just all of a sudden outrage. There's been several months where you've talked about how you're going to kill her. You brought a weapon to the home, which clearly indicates that you meant to act in an aggressive manner. And so they said no, but they did charge him with second-degree murder, not first-degree. And he had 5 years in prison. And then he got a new lawyer, and the lawyer said, hey, I've got this deal for you. If you move back to India and you stay in India and you never come back to the United States, you can get off. And he said, that's fine. Goes to India, lives, and surprise, surprise, he marries a lawyer, which I think is kind of ironic. But the most important part of this whole case, which is super important, is the civil case about it, where Tatiana's parents went to the psychiatrist and said, you are to blame as this just as much as Mr. Patter is. You knew for 8 weeks that he was making threats to kill her, that you had 8 weeks of sessions with him, and you knew this, and you knew that his friends had all said this, and that he was a serious threat. You should have taken it upon yourself to warn Tatiana of these threats so she can make extra precautions to keep herself safe and protected. And you also should have taken a harsher course of action. You shouldn't have just said, oh, let's write a letter and then be done with it and pretend like we had nothing to do with it and get rid of all documents of the letter. You should have tried harder to prevent this from happening. And so that started the duty to warn, which is super important in the psychology field, which most everyone has heard of, but no one knows where it originated from, which said that it is that if a psychiatrist keeps patient confidentiality, which is held very dear to psychologists, that they keep that unless the patient is a threat to themselves or a threat to others. And he was clearly a threat to others, and so the psychiatrist should have said something. And so this case was one of the earliest cases of the duty to warn, and that set in stone several other cases down. And like one of the most recent ones, the biggest ones, was with 2012 James Holmes. He was the one that killed several people in a movie theater, and before that his psychiatrist had warned the police that, hey, he is a threat to these people, you guys need to go question him. And they never questioned him, they never talked to him, and that could have made a difference. And so this whole case just kind of sets apart with psychiatrists between laws and ethics, and whether it is worth it to speak up or when to speak up, or how harsh of a course of action should you take to speak up. Because like I said, in some cases psychiatrists did speak up and nothing was done about it. And so this case just set in stone several other important steps in the psychology field to come. And I just think it's pretty crazy to think about it, and I do think that it is a very important rule in the duty to warn, and that the psychiatrist should be allowed to do this. However, sometimes other people, like the police and things like that, are not such on board to help them in protecting their client or protecting people around their client. And so that was my week. That was my week in the two cases I decided to choose. I'm sorry that it was so long. I tried to sum it up the best I could, but it was hard. So have a good day.